All right. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right, everybody, welcome back. I am Chris Allen, the co-host of the Dynasty Owners Manual podcast.
And I'm Adam Wilde, the other co-host of the Dynasty Owners Manual podcast, and I'll get us started with the foreword. We only have a couple things today, but primarily they recorded Best Ball Owners Manual. You've heard us talking about it a lot. That's Brad Reyes, and you'll know him as FF Madman. They've recorded and should be out probably by the time you're hearing this, so definitely check that out. That's going to be a lot of fun. Also, the last episode that you would have seen from us was actually a mashup episode with the Debbie Owners Manual, the other Dynasty Owners Manual family podcast, and that was actually a first-round mock, but we did it a little bit different. We actually spent more time talking about our picks, the process of those picks, why we're picking that position, where we picked it, so that's why it wasn't a deeper mock. But those are a couple things to be excited about.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the Best Ball Owners Manual, that jumping off. So definitely looking forward to that and seeing what Brad and Jeremy are going to put out for us. And then the mock draft, that was a lot of fun, chopping it up with both Andrew and Dwight. And then now that we're a part of the DLF family, I'm hoping that we'll be able to do a few more collaborations with them as time goes on. But here tonight, we're here with Mr. Shane of the Dynasty Football Factory, Mr. Data Don't Score Points himself, to talk about a couple of the things that I think when it comes to managing rosters, especially at this time of the year, when it comes to we've got the draft coming up here within the next couple of weeks. We've had pro days. We've had free agency moves. We've had a lot of activity going on in the NFL, and with much more to come, it seems like player values seem to be shifting on almost a daily basis. We've got players more or less, I guess, getting into their feelings over on Twitter. We've got other people trying to talk about running backs don't matter. There's a confluence of a lot of the discussion that's currently going on Twitter. So we wanted to bring Shane in here tonight to kind of help us sift through some of the information and more or less and really focus on the process for how you should look at dealing with your rosters at this time of the year. So Shane, just hopping right off into it, is there at any point during the fantasy season, let's say even like right after the Super Bowl, kind of when everybody walks into that hibernation period for fantasy football, is there any point in the offseason where you just stop looking at your rosters and you just say, hey, I'm just going to let this sit and I'm going to come back to it at some point in the future?
Not for me, no. Maybe it's a good idea for some folks, but I just find that there's too much going on all the time. Even the day after the Super Bowl, you have people overhyping, say, Malcolm Mitchell a few years ago. This year, maybe Sony Michel. So to me, there's always time to pounce on what's out there. Right after the Super Bowl, then we already start talking about free agency, and we're already looking at the rookies. Like you guys know, in the Debbie Owner Manual, they've been looking at those rookies for a while, but then everyone else is getting caught up, and it's like, okay, I really need to turn my attentions there. Should I be trading for draft picks? So I don't think there's really ever a downtime for me. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to make moves, but you should be assessing your roster at all times, especially if you're only in like 10 leagues.
Yeah, and I was actually wanted to make that clarification or have you expand on that a bit further. So when you're talking about just looking at your rosters as they sit, you're not saying just right after the Super Bowl you should be making trades or you should be hitting people in the DMs or anything like that, are you?
No, you don't have to. If you see something out there, just going back to the Sony Michel thing, he balled out during the playoffs. So if you're not high on Sony Michel, that might be the perfect time to sell on him, is the day after the Super Bowl. But there's no real impetus to do so. It's dynasty leagues. Everybody does want a break at some point, though, apparently, from what I hear. I guess it's a little different for guys like us because there's really no downtime, because you're always – between podcasting and writing and your leagues, you're literally always doing something dynasty related. But for regular day-to-day guys that just, they just play the game because it's fun. They want to win the money, but they don't need to stay up on every current event at all times. It's fine. Just sit tight. If your league just has a couple months quiet like quiet meditation time. Nothing wrong with that.
No, and I think that's really, I think when it comes to managing your dynasty roster or just approaching fantasy in general, I think trying to at least accumulate information. I think that's really the biggest thing that most dynasty managers should be looking at right now. We don't have to be making a trade every other day. Shout out to Russ, Dynasty Outhouse. But we don't have to be making those moves on a daily basis just to making moves. Let's just understand how we value the players that are coming out. How about we try and figure out how we value some of the free agents that are going to might be moving or switching teams. So assessing your roster, figuring out where you stand, even in your league. Are you a contender? Have you completely fallen short? Are you in some of that purgatory where you might have been at 6-6 or something like that throughout the season? So at least having that information on hand is really a critical piece that you will need to understand, like moving into the following season. And that's might be where some folks find themselves at now with just a couple weeks before the draft. But actually, speaking of the draft, so we have, I would say, a pretty interesting rookie class that's coming in. So just with this draft class in particular, are you finding yourself just kind of waiting to see where some of these rookies land? Are you fixated on a couple of guys already, or how are you now approaching your rookie picks for 2019?
Well, it's funny. The top of my board is pretty set. Most of the leagues I play in are super flex. So it's pretty much Kyler Murray, then N'Keal Harry, AJ Brown, and then probably Hakeem Butler.
Okay.
After that, that's where it gets dicey for me. And I guess no matter how strong a draft class feels, I kind of feel like this is always the spot where you get to about 104, 105, and you start going, I'm not really sure who I want to grab here. Like I had a rookie draft ongoing, or it might have ended by now. I don't know. I had 2 first-round picks and then called it a day. Mm-hmm. But I saw Josh Jacobs sitting out there at the, I believe it was the 107. So I said, well, I didn't want him at 101. I didn't like him at 102. But at 107, I'll take that risk on him that he's going to be a guy that, the NFL seems to love. So I don't, because, his production profile in college is fairly non-existent. And, there's some injury stuff there, but NFL evaluators, as much as we like to make fun of them, at the end of the day, they're probably smarter than us.
Or at least in charge.
Yeah, and they get to make those picks. So if they're going to invest first-round capital in him, he's guaranteed the whole value for at least 2 years, no matter how badly he does in his rookie season.
Right.
And what's scary right now is Jake Anderson did an awesome exercise where he took an actually pretty good mock, or at least somebody who tried very hard and not just one of these clickbait mocks. He took it, applied it to the players, pretended their landing spots were what they were, and then drafted accordingly. And it just goes to show you. So David Montgomery got drafted to the Vikings behind Dalvin Cook, kind of relatively similar players. I mean, David Montgomery, I believe, is a little larger, but they kind of got the same juice, and that would be tough. And, David Montgomery went in the 3rd round, and he's somebody that we like in the 1st at the very least. I like him at least, mid-1st. And when these guys land somewhere, it could just completely decimate your value, which is scary in Devy leagues. I mean, I have my fair share of Devy leagues with David Montgomery shares. So that's kind of why I wanted to bring up this topic, because there's definitely no time of the year where I can completely step back and say, you know what, I'm going to take a month off and just turn it off. For one, I can't, because we do a podcast. For 2, your team could suffer because there are players that you can capitalize on. If you don't believe in Godwin right now, you could make a lot of money on Godwin right now because there's not a lot going on, and his coach said a few things. I think he's a decent player, but I'd probably be selling him. It would be a downtime for a lot of people, but when you don't take that downtime, you get to capitalize on assets like that. But it is a time of the year that I do have to reel back. So for one, I want to trade for running backs. I want to trade for a lot of guys right now. I want to trade for Dalvin Cook and Devonta Freeman are a couple guys that I would like to be trading for right now. But somebody said a couple years ago, and I've lived by it since then because it made a ton of sense to me, when it comes draft time, don't trade for running backs because their value could be completely decimated. Now, Cook's value is not completely decimated. If David Montgomery went there, he might cede some touches, but some guys can just get completely demolished. Think TJ Yeldon wasn't very good, but he was the starter until Leonard Fournette came. So completely, demolished after that. So that's one thing I'm doing right now is trying to reel back on at least running back trades. Shane, are you kind of waiting to see where people land for either the wide receiver or the running back position to make some moves on some guys?
Wide receivers, no. Just one, obviously they last longer than running backs because, well, they're not running in the 320-pound linemen or 220-pound linebackers that are built like tanks. So they're going to last a little longer, obviously. And typically with the wide receivers, if it's a day one wide receiver, I don't care where he lands. I kind of learned my lesson a little bit last year with James Washington. I was really big on James Washington. Ends up in Pittsburgh, and he was dead to me. I just completely, you're not even in the first round to me.
Me too.
James Washington.
Yeah.
And, and it's an extreme case, obviously. All of a sudden, I think they traded Martavius that night. So probably before they even drafted him. But then, he was still stuck behind AB and Juju. So what are the chances that he's going to ever surpass those guys? Well, AB lost his mind. So now he's got a shot. Now, yeah, they've added Dante Moncrief, and that could be a little troublesome, at least for a targets thing. But, just in general, wide receivers that are really good they're going to make their way up that depth chart. And NFL teams are going to give first round guys and second round guys chance after chance to fail. So again, they'll hold some value. Now the running backs, I prefer to kind of wait on making moves there. I had 2 rookie drafts, and Jacobs, so far I've had 2 rookie drafts. Jacobs is the one guy that, I was a little iffy on because like the first draft I had was about a month ago. I didn't like him, but it's still, you still hear all the talk about he's going to be in the first round.
Yeah.
So fine, I'll move up now and grab him. But the rookie draft I did a month ago, I just wanted a bushel of them. So it's like Damian Harris, Justice Hill, like just give me a whole handful of them, and one of them will end up somewhere decent, hopefully.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, imagine Justice, well, not Justice Hill, but imagine David Montgomery or even, God forbid, Josh Jacobs ends up in Dallas.
Sure.
Right.
You're just, okay. Not only are they not the starters, but they're behind a running back that takes, 97% of the carries, like Lev Bell in Pittsburgh, and probably Lev Bell in,
the worst possible situation.
Yeah. So it's just, and that's scary at running back. The running back, he's only one guy in front of him. So there's you would assume a better chance, but Zeke hasn't shown to be injury prone. And he's just, you're never going to get, if Josh Jacobs or either of those players go there, they're going to see the field on special teams. And that's it. Now, luckily, Josh Jacobs, that's not going to happen to him. It could happen to Montgomery, though.
Right. It could. Because once you get past probably the first round, those guys are, you saw Nick Chubb last year go to be a quote unquote backup in the early second. So I think once you get past the first round, you are capable of being a backup. Now, I don't think teams like to draft backups in the first round because they don't like the stigma behind that, because it is very important for general managers to hit on their first round picks. So I think if Jacobs gets drafted in the first round, I think you're completely right. He's at least going to contribute in the first year, but it's probably going to be one of those juicy landing spots. I mean, it's not going to be early, so you're not going to get like the Bucks per se, but you could get a pretty good spot. You could get a pretty good spot with him.
Well, I'm sorry, Chris.
I was thinking, like, what about Atlanta?
Sure. I mean, love them there.
Yeah, I would too. That would crush Devonta Freeman, which is why I'm not actively trading for him. But
absolutely,
yeah, that would be, and that's a good example of practical application for make your trades right now. And we'll get into a trade in a league with me and Shane to kind of get into some more practical application. But it was all wide receivers, and that's kind of one of the reasons. So let's get into. We've already discussed that we're not taking really any time off, so we're capitalizing on some of the stuff that's happening in the offseason, even though it's quote unquote dead sometimes. So Shane, what do you feel you should be doing in the off season if you finish, say, middle of the road? You've got the 6, 7, or 8, something like that last year.
Yeah, it's time to assess your roster. Hopefully you're playing on MFL, who makes assessing your roster and your actual, I don't want to say talent level, but I guess how good your team actually is with the play all percentages and there's a few other tabs on there I can't think of off the top of my head, but MFL sets it up perfectly for Dynasty. And I guess it's one of the things we don't talk about as much when we talk about their site, but they do allow you, they have the tools where you can look at your team and go, you know what, I was 6-6 or 6-7. But really I should have been about 3-10 because this team is trash. Like, based on my play all, I really should have been 3-10. Maybe I need to just blow this up, the few assets that I have. Maybe I have a player like Philip Lindsay who played over his head last year, who was an outlier. Let me go sell those outliers now. It's possible that they're going to continue to be outliers, but likely not. That's why we call them outliers. Just trying to determine how far away this team is from winning. Like you guys said, being stuck in the middle is literally the worst place to be. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be the middle of the pack every year because even the rookie picks are middle of the pack.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And the hit rate on those is just, it's not as good as you would expect it to be.
And look at what you said earlier. I mean, your top four is the same as me, except for I'm flipping Hakeem and AJ. I mean, I love AJ, but I've said that my wide receiver one it's going to have to depend on landing spot because I like Harry, AJ, and Hakeem so close-knit that I'll let landing spot decide it. But after that, we both agree that I'm not super excited for many people past 4 or 5 unless these quarterbacks get a good spot. But then again, chances are you weren't a quarterback away last year. The good thing about quarterbacks, which if you play in a lot of super flex leagues, you might agree, you might not, but the best quarterbacks, well, let's not say the best. Mahomes had probably a significant more points per game, but the middle of the road quarterbacks are only scoring 2 more points than the worst quarterbacks. So that doesn't really help you a lot when Haskins gets a great landing spot and goes at 105. Like, sweet, you got a quarterback, but now you get 2 extra points than you did last year when you were rolling out Fitzpatrick/Winston. You know what I mean? So once you get past that 4 spot, it's tough. Why wouldn't you just blow it up, like you said, and trade up, or down for a lot?
Yeah, I'll tell you, with this draft class, it's weird because it's just that hole in the middle of the draft for me where I'm like, I might like these players, but I don't want to have to draft them here. Like, I shouldn't have to draft Noah Fant at 106. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And quite honestly, if I'm on the board and it's 106, and Metcalf is on the board, I'm probably going to snatch up Metcalf because of at least his upside. And yes, I know his down. It comes with the dangerous floor of Kevin White and Brashard Perryman.
Sure, but it's fine there.
Yeah, but at 106, at that point, I'm already middle of the pack. I might as well take a shot on a guy that can make a difference.
Yeah,
as opposed to, and you wouldn't draft him this high, obviously, but just an example, a guy like Deebo Samuel, who is probably going to be, a nice little player, and I could see an upside of 13 points a week, but I can get that guy pretty much any day of the week, anywhere, where Metcalf has the ability at least to have those 40-point weeks that just win a game all by himself.
And let's say that Jacobs went to a murky situation and you're sitting there at 6 and you're looking at DK and Jacobs. It's obviously too late to trade up. If you were middle of the road, especially if you've been middle of the road for a while and those 2 players are similar in value, take the upside because – I think I want to say that Ryan talked about this on the Dynasty Blueprint, but if you're in the middle of the pack, you need a game changer. So, if Jacobs goes to the Chiefs, then obviously take Jacobs. But if he goes somewhere murky, but he's better than DK as a prospect, I would probably be taking DK there as well. Something else that you mentioned that reminded me, something I wanted to mention earlier is that this year the popular thing has been to trade back. A lot of people are mentioning trading back, but I think that pertains more so to the late first, early second than it does the early first. I want to take these early first picks.
That's what I was going to ask,
Yeah.
because are there a lot of prospects that we're seeing go in the mid to late second that are really going to be worth our while to trade back out of the first round for? I haven't seen, I don't think the depth is really there like it's been there in past classes for the 2019 season.
Late first, sure.
Yeah, late first, but I'm talking like mid second, late second. I'm not seeing it.
No.
because
late first or early first is what I think everyone's trying to get at without actually being exact.
I think the problem is usually you can hammer running backs in a rookie draft. It feels like even in the late, throughout the second and the third, there's still kind of guys you can grab that, should have an opportunity or going to be at least a backup. But outside of, you got Jacobs, Montgomery, Miles Sanders, and then after that, it's just kind of like a cliff. Rodney Anderson be great if I thought he could play more than 5 games in a row without.
Right.
Yeah, him, Darrell Henderson.
Travion Williams. But
yeah,
it's just all these guys, and, a few people have written this. Just it seems like even the wide receivers, I'll note this on, but every one of these guys seems to have something wrong with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas, last year, DJ Moore, to me, is at least a wide receiver prospect. He was perfect. He had the perfect college production. He had perfect athleticism. He was the perfect prospect. I think people dinged him for route running or something. I forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, it wasn't even like, oh, no, he's, Dorial Green Beckham type of route runner. He was just, not Calvin Ridley. But this year it feels like there's guys with like gigantic holes. Like, I don't really worry about DK Metcalf's agility. I don't care about that. Like, the guy's a freak at nature. I don't care if it takes him an hour and a half to run the 3-cone. But his propensity towards injury scares me. And the fact that he got outplayed by A.J. Brown and DeMarcus Lodge when they were on the field is a little concerning. But he is still a monster. A.J. Brown, I love. He might be, honestly, the best prospect or the most complete prospect.
Most complete. I was going to say that.
Yeah, I agree with that. But actually, now that we got on that topic, this is a complete aside from the topic of this evening. But can you guys give me your thoughts on Marquis Brown? Because I'm hearing this first round lock discussion, and I'm just not understanding it. For an undersized receiver, I mean, he's what, like 170 pounds?
166.
Right. So for an undersized receiver, I mean, a slot receiver, I'm hearing traits of explosiveness. I'm hearing all these wonderful things. But for me, I'm trying to understand from either a production or trait standpoint how he becomes the lock for the first round over any of the receivers that we've discussed so far. I'm just not seeing it.
I got nothing. I was listening to UTH either yesterday or today. I forget. All the days blend in together, and I don't even remember if it was a paid episode or a free one. But they were talking about who was actually invited to the NFL draft, and I think there was only a couple of receivers, and Marquis Brown was one of them.
Yep.
And it's just mind-boggling because, people do keep comparing him to Deshaun Jackson, except Deshaun Jackson was much better in college. And Deshaun Jackson, he's smaller, but he's not elfin size like Marquis Brown. And I don't care about how tall he is. It's that one allegedly 170, but I'm really 160 because that's the type of dude. Like, it literally takes one shot for someone to crack his ribs and he's going to collapse a lung.
Right.
So I think that if Marquis Brown was 25 pounds heavier and an inch taller, he would be we would be talking about it being a top 5 instead of a top 4. I don't have problems with Marquis Brown. He's not one of the players I'm taking a stand against. He's very talented. You can watch the film and say, okay, I understand. I'm not angry at him being evaluated the way he is by the NFL. And he's supposed to be the little bit of Deshaun Jackson, a little bit of Tyreek Hill, and the type of thing where if Kyler Murray owes Russell Wilson for getting him the first overall pick, then Marquis Brown might owe those couple small guys for getting him in the first round. However, Deshaun Jackson is very impressive at getting off of press coverage. He is a tough son of a bitch. And I don't think that I've seen that from Marquis Brown, but man, he looks good. He runs clean routes. He's faster than everybody on the field. Somebody showed a clip on Twitter the other day that legitimately looked like the rest of the people on the field were in slow motion. And Marquis Brown, so they gave him about 10 yards of cushion. The safety did, actually. That was a poor decision, but the safety gave him about 10 yards of cushion. Marquis Brown went about 10 yards and did a stop and go, broke the safety's ankles from about 10 yards away, ran past him for a 40-yard touchdown. It's just, I see it, but Shane hit the nail on the head. I think he is legitimately so small that I can't get on board just because of how physical the NFL is. Everything else is great. If it's just practice, shorts and pads, he's going to be one of the best players on the field, no doubt about it. But he's like Taylor Gabriel small.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm having flashbacks to John Ross, like with the way that the NFL is valuing him and how we're going to and how he might wind up getting drafted. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, honestly, like, tell me what the difference is between how we're looking at Marquise Brown versus how the league viewed John Ross a couple of seasons ago. And I guess I'm just coming up. I'm trying to figure out why we're doing this again, and it's only been a couple of years, and we've seen what happened.
You know, it's mostly
funny. More. He's sorry, Shane. He's more well-rounded than John Ross. I'll give him that.
Sure.
I think John Ross was more impressive at what John Ross did, but also put John Ross on a team that gives him one carry in his rookie season, lets him fumble it, and then doesn't give him another chance. I mean, what was
he was put into the worst possible situation? Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking about how NFL talent evaluators are probably better at it than us. And then as we're discussing this, I immediately thought of John Ross too. But yeah, I know that Marquise Brown is actually a much better route runner. And the speed is obscene. Like there's no cushion that you can give him that's enough, because he's still going to eat that up, and he's just going to use it against you because you're just playing in fear. It's just, yeah, I mean, if he was, I don't even need him to be taller. Just give me like 10 more pounds so I don't, like, I'm not actually afraid for your life.
Mm-hmm. You know, literally, right.
Yeah. You can't hit what you can't catch. So there is that. And, you know, I'm assuming whatever team drafts him is going to be smart enough to say, you know what, let's not run this guy on a slant over the middle.
But he excels at that. That's the scary part. He does excel at things like that. So they're going to see that he's a complete receiver, but why draft him when you could have drafted? I would just feel so much more comfortable with someone like Hakeem Butler. All the things that Marquise Brown does well, Hakeem Butler can do, except for being that fast. So I understand if you needed a field stretcher, but he's better than a field stretcher. So really, you have to roll him out there. You have to play him like a wide receiver one, but that's going to send him over the middle, and that's going to get him demolished. I mean, let Vontaze Burfict lay a hit on Marquise Brown. That's what's scary, and that's why he's not in that top 5 discussion.
Yeah. You know, I'm just trying to think, though. So we did mention Taylor Gabriel, and he's a guy that does go over the middle. Like, he kind of does everything. And, I mean, I don't ever really remember him getting destroyed. Now, he's not uber productive. He's had stretches where he's been pretty good. Now I'm kind of talking myself into Marquise Brown, because there's also the fact he's been this small his entire life. Like, he's used to being the tiniest thing around. You know what I mean? I'm sure, like, muscle memory or whatever you want to call it, or just, you know, evolution, or
he knows how to get out of the way.
Yeah, at some point you learn how to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously, the NFL, it's faster than college, and the players are obviously the greatest in the world, so it's kind of night and day. But yeah, I'm going to keep falling for draft capital. I think if someone ends up drafting him in the first, I just want the NFL to make it easy for me, though. How about they send him somewhere like maybe not. He ends up on a team like the Eagles, where I know all he's going to do is be a deep threat. So I'm like, all right, no, I don't really have to worry about it, because he's going to only get 2 or 3 catches a week. So I'm not going to draft him. But if he ends up somewhere where there's opportunity, it's going to be, oh, geez, do I really want to pass on this guy?
Yeah. I fear for him to line up against someone who like Jalen Ramsey, that's just going to just dog him all game. And I fear for him holding up for that. I just think there's too much that we're not going to know. And maybe this is a problem with the little low point in the season. where we have to talk ourselves into these narratives because there's nothing else to go on. We've absorbed all the information that we can. Nothing to do until the draft. The draft is going to completely decimate our boards probably. I'm just saying I'm not going to get completely off Marquise Brown because if he weren't so small, I think that he's a great wide receiver. But he's got it. I'm going to be worried. Even if I draft him, I'm going to be worried.
Yeah.
So I remember last year too, and obviously there are different types of receivers, but a lot of people talked about how thin Calvin Ridley was. And I would say, I would say things like, he's a great route runner. I don't really care if he's not a physical marvel. Like there's some things that you can do through route running that are just going to get you open. And I was told a few times that, well, you can't run routes on your ass. Well, guess what? That wasn't a problem for him last year, was it?
No.
And a guy like and a guy like Marquise Brown too, who's a good route runner, and then has that first step that can just, like you said earlier, break your ankles.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be you might not be able to get hands on him, and you try to press him, he's just going to blow by you.
Yeah.
So now I've talked myself into Marquise Brown in the first round. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I would be tempted to take him in the late first right now.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I like, some of the guys that I'm hearing in the discussion JJ, I mean, he's the prime candidate, at least for me, coming out of the first round. But I think, like both of you guys have already mentioned beforehand, I mean, draft capital speaks volumes to us as to how we're going to value them moving forward, like after the draft is completed. So if he winds up going in the first round and then the second round brings the N'Keal Harris, Hakeem Butlers, DK, like all those other guys, then yeah, I mean, we'll be forced to value Marquise Brown higher than what we're discussing right now, and that's the way it's going to have to be.
And also, go ahead, Shane.
Sorry, and if he's at the bottom of the first round, fine. You're looking at a 30% hit rate anyway, and it's back to that. You know what? If I'm going to miss, fine, but if I'm going to hit, let it be a giant, big old hit.
Right. Yeah.
The second round's where I'll load up on running backs or. Sure. Usually, or the early first, but this year we don't really have that running back class for it. But yeah, screw it. Go big or go home.
Yeah.
And the last thing before we transition, bringing this full circle, is that we started the conversation by saying, I said, I don't think that people are advising you trade out of your top 5 picks or your top 4 picks because I think those are very strong picks. But the middle pack is not that great. And Chris and I have both stated that we like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. But if it's between him and Marquise Brown, I'm probably just going to trade back and take the cheaper of the two. And then maybe I get 2 second round picks. And then maybe I get I turn Marquise Brown into JJ Arcega-Whiteside and Irv Smith. And Irv Smith landed on, somebody said, the Titans. Sure. So then I'm getting, one of my top 3 tight ends and then the wide receiver that I had to flip a coin for anyways.
Right.
That's when I advise the trading back. Just not so much. The first 4, I think, are very solid. I think you have a good chance of hitting one of these first 4. But we talked about big names in the rookie world. Now let's get back to our rosters in the offseason. Let's talk about the top of startup drafts right now. Shane plays in mostly Superflex. I do as well. I'm pretty sure Chris does as well. So let's say my top 3 positionally are Mahomes, Barkley, and DeAndre Hopkins. You can talk some other guys up outside of DeAndre Hopkins, but for the sake of this, I just want to hear your thoughts, Shane, on when you should trade for these players and when you should trade away these players.
So this is fortuitous, but I actually, and I know you don't know this, but I dropped an article on Fantasy Pros today about sell high players. One was Sony Michel and the other was Patrick Mahomes. And mostly because his value is just absurd right now.
You guys see John Bosch's poll earlier today?
Yeah.
In 1 QB.
Yeah. And that was the 101
versus Mahomes. Yep.
He was winning handedly. Like it was 70-30 the last time I signed up. It might have normalized after that, but it shouldn't even been that way ever. It should have been completely the other way.
Flipped. Yeah.
Yeah. Like in a 1 quarterback league, that doesn't make sense to me. In a super flex, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But so, I to me, he's in that first tier. He's amazing, but there's no reason to think that Baker can't do what he did this coming year. There's no reason for me to think that Carson Wentz can't do what Mahomes did last year. Mahomes will be a perennial top 5 to 8 quarterback, but not everyone, but a lot of people are acting like he's just got QB1 locked down for the next decade, and he's going to be outscoring everyone by 5.5 points again. And that's not real. Yeah. It's not going to happen. So I'm advocating, look, if someone's got Deshaun Watson and they're willing to trade, and they want to throw in a little extra to get Mahomes, take it. And by a little extra, I mean, be greedy, because the Mahomes fiend is real. Yeah. Like, try to get a wide receiver 1 thrown in and see what happens. I don't care. Start the conversations there, because there's some people, and I looked on the DLF trade finder for this. I saw one trade in a 1 quarterback league. It was whatever it was, but it was basically like someone gave up just a ridiculous amount of capital for Mahomes. And I think he's, like I said, a great quarterback, but just slide down in the same tier, go get another one of the young guys and get a wide receiver 2 thrown in and call it a day.
Yeah, I think that would be a wonderful way to try and, I guess, boost your roster. And as we talked about it earlier, you might be in different situations. So in using some of the tools on MLF, or you might be able to, or in my fantasy league, you might be able to find out, you did better over expected. You're still down at the bottom of the barrel. So the different types of rosters, they might change depending on your situation, how you ended up after the 2018 season. So what sort of roster would you need in order to warrant trading away some of those players that we just discussed? So like Mahomes, Barkley, Nuke, I mean, any of those types of players. I mean, what type of roster would you have to have in order to do that? Or what would trigger that for you, Shane?
Well, Mahomes, I'll do it on any roster, to be quite honest with you.
Totally agree. I was going to say the same thing.
Barkley, I mean, frankly, if I just don't have a team with anyone else but him, I love him, and the guy could put up, 30 points a week next year. But if he's the only superstar I have on the team, and then, like, say my wide receiver 1 happens to be Robert Woods, who's a very good player, but he shouldn't be a wide receiver 1. My next best running back is Mark Ingram. I might not have a shot. These are decent. There's decent players behind them, but not the type that are going to win a championship. You got to have at least a couple superstars to win a championship. Nook's another guy. I like him. I think he's a very fine receiver. I just think people elevate him over other receivers for reasons that I'm not clear on, like OBJ. Like, people act like they're in two different universes when OBJ is actually able to play. I got news for you. He's actually better than Nook. Now, yes, he has injury concerns, but Devontae Adams, the guy he scored in double digits every game last year. Right. He averaged 15 points a week, and then he had weeks where he dropped 40. So if I can make a trade, and it'd be a small one, but if I could trade Nook for Devontae Adams and a second round 2020, right, do that.
Sure. Yeah. Try to gather some. So you're really just picking like $100 versus 99.99. It's really at that point when you're talking OBJ and Nook. I think the difference between the two is just that I think that they're going to score similarly, and that Nook might give you an extra game. That's all that. I think the real argument I've been trying to have is Devontae Adams against Michael Thomas, because it's always the quarterback situation that's cited with those top guys, because they're also good. So we have to pick something outside of their control, and it's typically the offense, and it's typically the quarterback situation. So why not trade Michael Thomas for Devontae Adams, and like you said, even a 19 third or something like that, just to get another shot. So to recap, Mahomes, I think you can sell him anywhere. And the reason you can sell him anywhere is because somebody tweeted earlier, I really need to start writing down who are saying these things, but somebody tweeted earlier about why don't you just take 2-year quarterbacks and recycle them every single year? And I said, that's a genius idea, because that's what I do. The Ben Roethlisbergers and the Phillip Rivers are my favorite quarterbacks this year. And I've got actually 3 rosters with those 2 quarterbacks on them. And that's because they'll score similarly to those guys. Here's the thing about the QB landscape. Patrick Mahomes is so good, and he's probably one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the league, and he's going to be for years to come. But everything that everything has to happen perfectly for him to become QB1 again. It's just the smallest minute things affect that. The smallest thing is the difference between him being the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 6, which you'll still be happy with. But the thing is, Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers might be the 9 and 10. So what's the huge difference when you could get, realistically, if you're in a league that's going to draft Patrick Mahomes 101, which is happening a lot in Superflex, then Devontae Adams would be going around 110. So you're talking you could get Devontae Adams and Phillip Rivers for Patrick Mahomes, realistically, if we're talking startup value. And let's say that Phillip Rivers is only going to score 1.5 less than Mahomes a game. That's a situation where you're making that move. To touch on the trade that I did real quick is, when do you trade those top name players? Because it's very, very difficult to get rid of those players, especially wide receivers, when you could actually keep them for years. Running backs, not so much. Their career could be over in a second. I had Odell Beckham Jr., who I think is amazing, and talent-wise, he could be better than Nook, just maybe not stability-wise. I traded OBJ for Kenny Golladay, DJ Moore, Christian Kirk in the 103. I really like those top 4, and that was in our league, Trade Addicts. And, I didn't feel real good about it, but I don't think I would have done the other side either. I needed a lot of depth, and that's kind of the situation where you have. And what I did in that league, for reference, is I took a ton of first-round picks in our startup, and they were slipping farther than I thought that they should. And I said if I was going to take another league this year, I was going to experiment, because I'm the type of dude that takes all the old wide receivers and all the young running backs and tries to win every single year. So I'm like, the only way I can justify picking up another league is if I'm going to try something different that's going to make me a better owner. So what I did in our league, Shane, is I took a ton of first-round picks and tried to go real young, and that's the exact opposite of everything. But then I'm looking at all this first-round picks, and I'm like, dude, I don't have a team. and I'm going to try to draft at least a good bit of them, because I never draft rookies either. I go through the whole process every year, and then I just trade them for veterans. So now I'm testing another theory where I'm actually going to try to draft them. Maybe I'll trade them after that, but I think that these guys are holding value better than we thought that they did for a long period of time after you draft them. So I think that there's value in taking the picks, shooting your shots, and then dumping them, but dumping them early if you think that they're going to bust. Because Rojo, you could have traded him for almost what you drafted him for about 2 to 3 months there. So if you did see him in the preseason and not be stubborn, you could have probably recouped your 107, 108 value for the next year. So there's a kind of, just for reference, a kind of situation where, yeah, OBJ is a superstar and I love having him, but if I can't fill a roster, let me take all these upside guys. Like you said last year, DJ Moore, he was my 106, which you had all those running backs. So a lot of people wanted to take Rojo there. And I had DJ Moore really high. I thought he was a perfect prospect. So, DJ Moore, Kenny Golladay, not the biggest fan of him, but everyone else seems to think he's emerging. So hopefully he does. I mean, smarter people than me really like him. So
well, we'll see.
Yeah, there's the thing. I just took a bunch of shots. I like all the guys that I got in that deal.
And if you don't even believe in Kenny Golladay, well, guess what? There's 11 other guys in this league. It is a 12-team, right?
Yeah, it's 12.
I'm not the best at looking at rules or the leagues I'm actually in sometimes. But, yeah, I mean, you could flip Kenny Golladay because there's a good chance that at least half the people in the league think he's the next big thing. I'm kind of on the fence with him. But, I mean, look, I love OBJ, but to be able to get Golladay, DJ Moore, who I'm a DJ Moore fanboy, and Christian Kirk is a nice little piece. And then you said the 103.
Right.
And it's super flex, so you're getting either Harry or A.J. Brown. So,
right. Yep. And I have the 101.
Yeah. And based on your situation, the fact that you couldn't actually submit a roster, a legal roster, yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yep. So there's a situation where, it looks nice to see him, but what's it going to do for you when OBJ puts up 30 and you have Kenny Stills put up 4?
Yeah, and you know what? And Barkley is even more of a sell in a situation like that because, again, he's a running back, and even the best ones have shorter careers usually. Right. They're like rockets. They just flame out. 5-6 years if you're lucky. Once in a while you have a guy like LaDainian Tomlinson.
Sure.
But again, he's a freak of nature. But you could look back and look at running backs like Priest Holmes, Arian Foster. You're like, you think these guys played forever, and then you look back and you're like, wow, they had like 3 like monster seasons and then immediately died.
Yeah.
Just
lower body injury after another.
What's kind of scaring me is that so last year I bought like every LaShawn McCoy share ever. And I tried to tell myself that he is the only show in town. There's literally nothing else that they can do on offense. So he has to be great. And I followed his his crime documents all the way through to make sure that I wasn't losing my running back on 7 rosters. And it turned out terrible for him, and I learned a very, very harsh lesson. Luckily, he wasn't too expensive in a lot of leagues. I think the most I spent was Deion Lewis and a second on him. But I'm trying to learn my lessons, and I understand there's nothing that can happen to Saquon Barkley for him to not be a wide receiver or a running back 1, barring injury. So I'm not saying that, but does it kind of scare you guys that he's kind of like, what's the difference between the Bills last year and the Giants this year in terms of function? The wide receivers are definitely better, but it's not functioning.
Well, I think the difference is Barkley himself. I mean, he is that transcendent of a talent. Like, honestly, he might be, well, now he's a veteran, or, well, second-year veteran. But, coming out of college, he might have been the best running back prospect in the history of football.
That's what I said.
People talk about generational talent, and then I know people would joke about it all the time during the season. But the guy actually was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he is an actual freak of nature. I mean, you should really sell him if your team is garbage, because the percentages say he's not going to last long enough for you to win. But goddamn, that's hard to do, because if anyone's going to be an outlier, it would be him, because he's already an outlier in everything else. So he's the difference. I mean, he scored 5 less points last year without Odell Beckham in there, because Eli would use him just to dump passes off, and you could key on him. But even then, I think he averaged 20 points a game. So a 20-point week was a bad week for him. That he's another level. That is the main difference. But even that, I mean, Sterling Shepard's much better, and Golden Tate are much better, and Evan Ingram's much better than anything Buffalo had over there. And I like Robert Foster. And
sure, I think I don't want to make a 1-for-1 comparison, and I definitely am not saying that I ever expected anything near what Barkley did from McCoy. But just in trying to learn my lessons over the years, I think what I took away from me investing so heavily in McCoy is that the offense matters more to the running back than the running back matters to the offense. Now, I know having a running back as good as Barkley, which I definitely think, at least in my time playing, that he's the best rookie running back to come out of college. So like I said, there's no way he won't be a running back 1. Even you could play with 1 less lineman and he'd probably still be a running back 1. But just having such a bad situation, think about Barkley. I mean, nothing anyone offers you is enough for him. And like you're saying, Shane, I think that makes him a sell. If literally anything anyone offers you makes you want to reject it, I think that's that much more reason to get rid of him.
Yeah, it's hard though, because I had a lot of 101s either through trades or just earned sucking last year, mostly through trades though, and I traded a shit ton to get them. And this year I've gotten offers for him that I'm like, there's no reason to hit reject on this. There's no logical reason that I can come up with to hit reject on this, and I will immediately hit reject. Like, no, you didn't offer me 2 like top 5 wide receivers for him. That's not enough.
Yeah, and a 101.
Yeah. Oh, you're lowballing me, huh? Devontae Adams and Juju? No, not enough.
No, I would never take that. In the 2021st, never. I don't want any of that stuff. Yeah. But I guess now, to wrap all of that up, I mean, so depending on where you're at and I guess what your situation is going into the 2019 draft, what are you trying to do with some of your first round picks? You can get as specific as you want with some of your own teams and whatnot, but give us your situation. Let us know like what picks you're dealing with, whether they're early first, no first, and just a bunch of seconds. And so what's your approach to this class?
I think I'm like most dynasty players where I like to acquire my rookie or my running backs through the rookie draft.
Mm-hmm.
So this really kind of puts us at a disadvantage when there's two, three, maybe three.
Yeah.
And even three, we don't feel comfortable with. Like, you know what I mean? Honestly, none of these guys are slam dunk. Like we felt, okay, a lot of people felt about Leonard Fournette and obviously Saquon. These are kind of guys like, well, they got to kind of fall in this right situation. And, hopefully they don't end up in the wrong scheme. So I'm really out of sorts there. But, I mean, one league, UDPL, Ultimate Podcast Dynasty League. I think I got the acronym mixed up, but like I know I'm trying to make sure I at least get one of the first 3 picks, but I'm not going to overpay for it. There's years where I'll willingly overpay, like knowing like this probably is not a smart move. But this year, it certainly feels like this isn't a smart move, and I don't have the desire to do it. Just those draft picks outside of the 1-4 in 1 quarterback leagues, I'm like, In 2 quarterback leagues, there's a little more value, but not a lot. Like I don't want to be the guy that drafts Dwayne Haskins because I don't know that he's actually all that good. And not scouts, but film guys say, yeah, no, he's good. I mean, he had 1 year starting. I mean, it's easy to look good one season. I do like guys that at least give me 2 seasons of starting, so I can get a little.
And you're throwing to Paris Campbell.
Yeah, and McLaurin wasn't bad there, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he looked good at his pro day for sure.
Yeah. So, I'm zeroed in on Kyler Murray at quarterback. It's him or bust. Outside of him, if I'm late in the first round, I got Drew Lock at 113. Super flex. I can't pass on that. So I'll grab him at the end of the first round if he's still sitting there. Like Josh Allen last year, people were floating around in the second round of super flex leagues. Like, guys, we're playing super flex. Like, what are you doing? I don't care if we don't like this guy. Yeah, like this guy was a top 15 NFL draft pick. He's a quarterback. Like the percentages say he's going to hit. I don't care if he can't hit the broadside of a barn. The percentages say he's going to hit. It's the smart play.
Well, if the barn's like a mile away, he could hit that.
As long as it's far away.
It's a mile wide. Yeah, it's going to be a mile wide, too.
Be a mile wide and a mile away because the dude has a cannon, but that's about it.
Doesn't this kind of feel like one of those years? I guess, Chris, you might not have seen this. You've been very spoiled in your rookie drafts since you started, I might add. But does this not feel like one of those years where you're sitting at 1-4 and you're trying to trade back and people are like, no, Like, I don't want to give you anything. I've had a couple years like that, and you're at the 1-4 and you think you're smarter than everybody else, and you're like, you know what, I can get my guy at 1-6. They're like, no, I wouldn't give you a turkey sandwich to move up from 1-6 to 1-4 because it's just so sporadic after 103. Like, you pick your flavor is pretty much what it feels like.
You know, what's funny is I had my one rookie draft that was, well, now it's over a month ago. At that point, the hype train wasn't out of control on A.J. Brown yet. So I had the 1-1, the 1-2. I had like 4 first rounders because I had just blown up the roster the year before for a bunch of picks. And, you know, so I drafted Harry at 101. And then 102, I'm like, well, I want A.J. Brown. This is who I want here, but no one else is going to draft him here. Like, they're not. They're just not. So I dropped back, I think, to like the 1-4. You couldn't pull that shit off now, not in a 1 QB league. And I don't think you'd be able to do that in a 2 QB league.
No.
Maybe if Butler goes 104. But so, I mean, like, I guess 105 is just the line of demarcation. If you don't need a quarterback and hope that the people in front of you need quarterbacks.
Unless you love DK as well. You got to remember some people really do love DK. I mean, some people still have him as wide receiver 1, and that's fine if you're not risk adverse. But so it could basically, I'm saying he's a huge question mark to me. So maybe it's a top 5, but still, you're going to have so much trouble trading the 106 for the 108. You're not going to get anything out of it. I mean, maybe ask for a 2023 if you know that your guy's going to be there. Like, I can't even think of who you would even want there. Like a tight end. Say you love Hawk and Fant. You love them both. And you're at the 1-6, and you're like, you know what? I really don't want to pick between Hawkinson and Fant. I know one of these people is set at tight end. Let me trade back 2 spots and pick whatever one's left. That's something you can do, but you're only going to get maybe a third on top of it this year.
Yeah.
I think I'm actually, as we talk, and I we keep going through the names, I'm actually coming up with my actual draft board rankings now for super flex leagues.
Yeah.
Haskins isn't involved in them. I guess I'm not that impressed with them, but it's definitely like Murray, Harry, Brown, Butler, and then I'm going to either go Metcalf or Jacobs, and it's going to depend on Jacobs' landing spot. If he ends up with the Eagles, well, first of all, he's probably not going to be there at that point. But if he ends up with the Eagles or Tampa Bay, then I'm going to be all in, especially if it's in the first round. And you know what? I think he's my new 1, 2, 3, my new 104. Sorry, Hakeem.
Yeah.
It's funny that I try to preach landing spot, but it's running backs. Landing spot does significantly matter for running backs.
Absolutely.
Much more than wide receivers. But his landing spot could turn him into my 104 or, my 212 if he lands with Dallas. You know what I mean? So it's hilarious.
You could kind of say that 10 people matter for running back and 2 matter for wide receiver, essentially, unless you're doing some pick routes or anything that involves a setup. It's essentially you and the quarterback and then you in the corner, unless it's zone. But statistically speaking, it's far more reliant on the player himself at wide receiver than it is running back. That's why we can have this top 3 discussion right now, because we know what they can do. I have no idea what line that Josh Jacobs is going to get stuck behind. It might be, you might want to puke, or Seahawks might just take them because that's all they do is take running backs. And then it's like, do I really want that for Jacobs to sit behind Penny and Carson or whatever order, and then it's just like, then if I have the 105 and I was just watching the draft for Jacobs, I'm just not going to watch any more of the draft after that. And that's something that can happen and does happen because so many players got bad landing spots last year.
Well, the landing spot, I try not to read everything in the landing spot because the situations change very quickly, very quickly. It takes one bad season as a head coach for them to shit can you, and then everything changes, and even if you were like Philip Lindsay, you were in a good situation. Well, all of a sudden they bring in offensive line coach who just happens to run a blocking scheme that, better fits your competition. And the new coaching staff has no ties to either of you. So frankly, they're just going to, whoever looks better on the field, that's going to be who gets to play. Obviously, again, the Zeke situation, you end up behind him. And I don't care if Jason Garrett's fired right now and I coach the team. Zeke, I'm still going to hand the ball. Unless you're blind, deaf, and dumb, you're going to go, well, Zeke's touching the ball 90% of the time on rushing times. Just that's what's going to happen.
Right.
Man, so you guys are making me really question things. So now I got like Metcalf and Jacobs in the top half of my draft, and Marquise Brown might be in the bottom of the first.
Yeah.
I just hope that the NFL draft does take it easy on me. I don't care about anyone else. Just at least give me the landing spots I need.
You pick the landing spots, and I'm going to trust you to make correct decisions. The last thing that I want to talk about is something that Ryan McDowell tweeted earlier, and he created a graph that outlined the top 12 picks from last year and what their ADP has done per month to now. And I alluded to it slightly earlier. I'm going to have you touch on it, Shane. Basically, what I'm seeing in the graph is that the first few months that ADP was out on these rookies, they were relatively consistent regardless of what they were doing in training camp, regardless of what they were doing in the preseason. And then it made me think back to the Ronald Jones situation and how bad he was and all of the buts. I might have even been one of the buts included. And I'm trying something different now. I'm trying to learn from that, and I'm going to say I'm going to give you a chance, but hey, if you're not showing me early, I'm going to can you and get your same value next year. Now, 2020 is so hyped up, you're not going to get your exact same value. Let's say for 18, you drafted Rojo at the 1/6. You might have been able to trade for a mid 2019 first. You're probably not going to be able to do that this year. But if you drafted Miles Sanders to a good situation in the early first, and he's just not working out, you're going to be able to get that late 2020 first for him. So are you trying to draft your draft picks, Shane, and hoping they hold their value, or do you just trade the picks before you have to worry about it?
Well, here's the problem with any of the running backs you draft out of this class is the 2020 class is going to come and just absolutely destroy the world.
Yeah.
So even if a guy's drafted, say the Eagles draft Josh Jacobs in the first round and say he sucks, and they end up with another first round pick and it's high this time. Well, guess what? Travis Etienne's going to be in the draft. So how safe is Josh Jacobs? And just extrapolate that by, I don't know, what are we thinking? There's at least 5 to 6 to, depending if they all.
Etienne,
Dobbins,
Dylan. Benjamin looks really good. Yeah,
and
there's a lot.
Yeah, and that's without even now. It's not, obviously, a couple of those guys are going to fall off. Maybe some will stay in school, but then there's always the guys that pop up out of nowhere, out of San Diego State University, that run for 1,800 yards, and you overdrafted the second pick overall, like I did last year.
Boise State will put out another running back that we're all going to be mad about. So yeah, it'll happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's just in general too. For I guess league wide, not even just rookies, but just any running backs. None of them are safe. There's like 6 running backs that might be safe, like Marlon Mack. You better run for 1,600 yards this year, because if you don't, Cam Akers is coming to take your job. Or that's going to happen all over the league. Yeah. But usually, I like to make my picks or hold on to my picks. I don't want to sell at a loss, especially at running back, because they're typically going to hold their value.
Sure.
And then at wide receiver, you got to give them a little more time. And it's easy to get down on wide receivers because I think it's harder for us to understand the wide receiver position. Like to us, it's just like, hey, go run out there and catch the ball. Like, how hard is that? We don't realize all the intricacies that go into actual route running and blocking and the things like, that coaches actually give a fuck about. They want them to run block, and they will pull a rookie that doesn't run block, but you're just like, well, this guy can't catch a fucking ball.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas a running back, it's easier to see and easier to understand. I think you can look at it and go, wow, he missed that hole. Like, what the fuck? Like, seriously. Sorry for my French.
You're fine.
I went this far. You know what I mean? But I like buying low on those guys too, the high pedigree guys. If someone's going to sell a day one wide receiver after one down season, hey, I'm here for it. If you're going to usually sell a running back after a down season and he's a day 1, 2, or 3 guy, or a day 1 guy or a round 2 guy, I might buy him. Not this year, because 2020 is a whole other ball, and that's going to be fun.
Oh yeah, and I guess I wanted to ask real quick. So even if you did want to sell one of your picks, like maybe during the off season, you're hearing stuff out of training camp or whatever, how would you even approach another dynasty manager with that type of trade and say, hey, I'm trying to offload this guy onto you? How do you even, I guess, pretty up that type of offer without them looking at, well, you just drafted him, why don't you want him anymore? I mean, I guess, how do you even approach making that?
Chris, there's always the what I did when Tyreek Hill, when it was speculated that he broke his child arm. As soon as it came across Twitter, 5 minutes later, I said, Tyreek Hill's for sale. First offer, give me a first. And someone said, I'll give you the 111, throw in a second. And this was in the group me chat.
Yeah.
So
I believe I wasn't listening.
Yeah. So some situations, most situations, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna sell low on a guy that I actually want to keep. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but if I have actual hope for a guy, I'm not gonna sell low on him.
Right.
So I'm not gonna then use the bullshit method of trying to offload him on you, because I gotta be honest with you. I hate when people do that to me. They send me that, page and a half thesis as to why this trade makes sense for me. Because if I have to, it's like a joke. If I have to think about it, it's not funny.
Right.
So if you're going to send me a 4-paragraph article why I should trade for your 2018 111 and give you my 2020 first and second, and why a bird in hand and blah, blah, blah. Like I get through 3 words of that and I'm like, yeah, goodbye. So I just don't do that. I don't have that bullshit mechanism in me like that. So you're going to have to ask another guy that's good at like a car salesman. They're good.
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah. So here's my thing about trying to get rid of and this is going to be my method because this is the strategy that I've chosen to adopt. Last year, a Rojo fan would have still paid up for Rojo. They would have paid equal value for Rojo in the preseason because it's preseason. Who cares? Blah, blah, blah. But thinking back, he didn't look good, and I gave him all those excuses as well. It's a third-string offensive line, yada, yada. But he was showing us exactly what we were concerned with before we drafted him. And I still drafted him in a spot, and I'm still mad at myself because I wanted DJ Moore there, and I should have took him. But I listened, and I kept Rojo, and now I still have him, and that shouldn't happen. So what I'm getting at is know your league. So, we go back to the notebook. That's why you learn how to be such a great owner by just asking you smart people questions every week. Leo's got his notebook. I'm going to flip open my notebook and I'm going to say, who loved Darrell Henderson? And when Darrell Henderson got sent to a good spot and didn't do great, I'm just going to go to the person that loved him. I'm not going to say I'm unloading him on you. Maybe I'm not unloading him. Maybe I'm not being patient enough. But like Shane said, I don't have patience for these running backs this year because they're going to get decimated next year. They have to succeed. It's going to be so hard to even take a running back that lands on the Bucs because if they don't absolutely demolish their first year, which is so hard to do, they're going to get replaced next year by one of the 7 guys that we listed off the top of our head without even thinking about it. Yeah. So, we're already have those names almost as fresh in our heads as this 2019 class. You can't be patient with the running backs this year. So what I'm doing, if I'm going to unload one of these guys, you really only have about 3 to 4 months based on the chart that Ryan put up with the ADPs before they started dipping. Now, a lot of them came back up. Ridley dipped a little, came back up once you saw he was going to score a ridiculous amount of touchdowns. Kirk dipped a little because he took a while to do anything, went back up. Anthony Miller dipped, went a little bit back up. He's still right around what he got drafted at. Now, those are wide receivers that are going to hold their value and fluctuate more. But with the running backs, it seemed like you had about 3 months. So yeah, I would have a very short leash this year with these running backs. And after 2 to 3 months, I'm not going to go to someone and say, I'm trying to get rid of this player. Give me the cheapest offer you've got, because then you might as well have just waited it out. I think what I will do, though, is try to go to an owner that I know likes them. And if you've traded with me, you know that I'm just up front and I'm going to say, hey, I know this is your dude. Like, you have the patience for him. Would you pay me close to value? And that's the only way I can see you getting it done.
I think that's – oh, go ahead, Shane.
I'm sorry. But Ronald Jones, just because we keep coming back to him, because I can tell it hurts you inside. That's a case of where – anyone that held on them or anyone that drafted them ignored all available evidence. You know what I mean? Like, there was literally nothing to point to and go, I mean, you could point to his tape in college and go, oh, I really liked him. Well, he didn't catch passes. And then, he was drafted Tampa Bay. It's like, all right, well, it's a good landing spot. And then as soon as he got there, they were like, yeah, this guy can't even start in practice. Yeah. And even the coaches weren't, coaches are usually glowing, or at least it seemed like they moderately enjoy your company. Yeah. And they Cutter and I think it was Cutter basically sounded like he wanted nothing to do with him after the first week of training camp. Yeah. At that point, it might be like, oh, this guy might be really testing my whole give rookies a little time, because everything's telling me that he's not going to hit. But, look, we're all going to have those misses like that,
And we're going to get Miles Sanders, who only had a year of production because he was behind Saquon, but he looked really good. He's definitely more complete than Rojo was, but just as an example, because he's my if you play spades, I've got 2 and a P at running back. I really like Montgomery. I really like Jacobs, and I probably really like Miles Sanders, depending on where he goes, but I don't think there's 3 landing spots. So Miles Sanders is the type of guy that this year, trying to learn my lesson, if he falters early, I'm going to try to just recoup value on them instead of wait it out and be patient like we try to do in most other aspects of this game we play.
And I like that. But Shane, thank you so much for coming and sitting down with us tonight. I mean, there's been a hell of a good discussion surrounding the rookies, the veterans, roster construction strategy, and all that. But before we get you on out of here tonight, I wanted to give you a second to at least talk about any upcoming projects you have, things that the people should look out for coming from you, either before the draft, after the draft, off-season content, anything you got going on right now, man. It's your time to shine.
Yeah, so, I write co-owner and writer, editor for Dynasty Football Factory. I don't really have a set schedule on when I write things. Part of the deal there is that I just have the freedom, like, I think I want to do this, or I just feel like writing about this player because I really think they're going to do well. Like we have making the case for wide receiver one that came out today. We did a whole series on the offensive positions. So I just, it gives me the freedom to just literally write about whatever I want because I'm, I'm in charge of content. So who's going to tell me no? And then obviously the Dynasty Trades HQ podcast, which is, I think, my favorite thing. And I do that with Madman, who is going to be hosting the Best Ball Owners Manual.
Yes, sir.
And, he's a great co-host. And I do that with my other co-host, Michael Sipes. And I mean, of all things that we do, like that's, I think for all three of us, that's our favorite. And then I also write for Fantasy Pros. Like I said, just came out with an article today about selling Mahomes and why you should do it. It was pretty good, so you should read it. Yeah. And then one more thing is, I've gotten back more in redraft, and we're working on a redraft guide for Dynasty Football Factory, which is fun because I've never put together a guide before, and it's frightening that I'm going to screw it up, but hopefully I won't.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely have to look out for that and see how much you screw it up, but hopefully you don't. But otherwise, again, thanks for coming on tonight. Adam, before we get on out of here, do we have anything for the folks?
Man, I missed this in the foreword, but it is very important that we are now the video guys at DLF.
Oh, yeah.
I think we kind of announced it last week, but we didn't really announce the capacity. So you've got all these fancy writers and all the people we associate it with every day. We said, you know what? We're not going to do that part. Chris already writes at 1,200 different places, and I just don't really like to anymore. I like to do this. So we're the new video guys at DLF. We're also going to have the podcast on the DLF family of pods, and also Devy Owners Manual is coming with us. Dwight's a new writer there as well. So you'll have the Devy Owners Manual and the Dynasty Owners Manual pod on the DLF family feed, and Best Ball Owners Manual won't be on the DLF family feed because what we want to do with the Best Ball Owners Manual is discuss so many other aspects, MFL 10s, draft, some Dynasty Best Ball. We want to hit so many different markets that it can't just be Dynasty. But the other two are definitely going to be featured on the family of pods. So I can't wait. I can't wait to get started. That's definitely a crucial one. And you can find me at APWILDE GoCabs.
All right. And Shane, where can we find you at on Twitter?
Oh, I'm at DFF at DFF_Shane, or just look up Data Don't Score Points.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And just so people know, I am not at all against analytics. It was actually, I owned a troll, and I took his hurtful words and I've used them, and I forget that word. I've appropriated them in a way that makes me feel good. And no, I'm just stoked, really happy you guys had me on. And that's awesome. You guys are going to be on DLF. When do you, when's your first podcast going to drop through the DLF family?
It's actually going to be on YouTube, but hopefully we can start next week.
YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
YouTube. We're going to have to see our faces, unfortunately.
Our faces all the time through DLF.
Well, here's the good thing about YouTube. I don't know if anyone knows. You can open it and then actually just go do other things and not have to watch it and still listen to it. I'm not saying you guys aren't good looking. Handsome gentlemen. I'm just saying if that's not someone's deal.
Validation from you, Shane. Or if not, I was going to be pissed. Fine. All right. So for Adam, for Mr. Data Don't Score Points, I'm Chris Allen. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX. We thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you all next week.
Great show, guys.
Yes.